Our next hymn choice for our meditations is one of my favorites. Begins with Creator of the earth and sky. And this particular hymn was written in 1967. So it's one of our more modern hymns, believe it or not. And it was written by Donald Hughes. Hughes was the son of a Methodist minister who worked in the church all of his entire life. There's a website called Discipleship Ministries, and it has a wonderful summation of the themes of this particular hymn and again why they were so relevant at the time that they were written, and I would argue are still fairly relevant today. The writer of the article on Hughes is C. Michael Hahn, and he describes the hymn in this way. Hymn writers in the last half of the 20th century often produce very prophetic hymns. The optimism immediately following the Second World War soon gave way to continued global conflict, political unrest, and urban blight. These events called for hymns that not only praised God, but also brought the struggles of the streets into the sanctuary. At the same time, the 1960s represented astounding technological advances, including spaceflight and placing men on the moon. The author goes on to speak more specifically about this hymn. He writes, the first stanza addresses the creator of the universe. The remaining two lines of the first stanza are a petition to grant us your truth for wisdom and grant us your power for strength. Stanza 2 begins, we have not known you. Then the poet addresses spaceflight in negative terms. To the skies our monuments of folly soar. Stanza 3 begins, we have not loved you. The author speaks blatantly that our lack of love for God has devastating results. First, quote, far and wide the wreckage of our hatred spreads. And second, quote, evils wrought by human pride recoil on unpenitent heads. Then the final stanza poses a rhetorical question. How shall we follow in your way? This hymn is considered to be very reflective of the world as it was perceived in those late 1960s. It's an interesting contrast to how we look at space exploration, for example, now. We don't see the technology such as the Mars rovers as a folly. We see it more as an ability to enable deep space examination. Because of the accomplishments started in that first time period, we are no longer viewing our space journeys in a negative sense in this time period. Instead, we see them in the same way that we see historic explorers that went to new lands and had adventures and tried to find out more. One of my colleagues is a woman named Pan Conrad, and she's a fascinating person to talk to. She is both a priest and an engineer at NASA, and she works specifically on those Mars rovers. She explains that it is her curiosity and her desire to learn more about the unknown, both in space and God. And this was what drives her to discovery, which in turn cycles around and leads her into a deeper love of God and a better understanding of the universe. In other words, there's no sense of folly in what we're doing today. So, before we get any deeper into that, let's take a few moments and hear the words of this hymn, this very unusual hymn, and see how it appeals to our Lenten sensibilities. Creator of the earth and skies, to whom the worlds of life belong, grant us your truth to make us wise. Grant us your power to make us strong. We have not known you. To the skies our monuments of follies soar, and all our self-wrought miseries have made us trust ourselves the more. We have not loved you. Far and wide the wreckage of our hatred spreads, and evils wrought by human pride recoil on unrepentant heads. For this our foolish confidence, our pride of knowledge, and our sin, we come to you in penitence. In us the work of grace begin. Teach us to know and love you, Lord, and humbly follow in your way. Speak to our souls the quickening word, and turn our darkness into day. This hymn can't help but cause us to want to focus on our actions as a community, as humanity, and focus on our need and our desire to repent for the mistakes that we've made. So here's some points to ponder on. Do you think the themes of this hymn that were acknowledged at the chaotic time of its publication are still important to us today? And why or why not? What do you think it meant by evils wrought by human pride? And finally, how would it feel to have God grant you truth for wisdom and power to make you strong? There's some pretty deep thought going into this hymn and can come out of contemplation of it. And so I will leave you to contemplate this hymn and look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. And so until we get together again, take care and may God bless you.